Hello there everyone, I am Doomcard, and here's today's presentation, for it is a guide on League of Legends' newest champion, Vex, the Gloomist. So, to give an overview, I'm going to be going through her abilities and use cases, and then over a few different areas on her. And then ultimately a couple example builds of what to do. I'm ultimately not a great player, so being able to give some abilities and use cases on them is the best I can give that will not give a bad kind of description towards the champion. And for areas like roles, summoner spells, and runes, ultimately, I think what best represent this is the data. So what I'm going to be using is data from two different sites, Lolalytics and u.gg, in order to provide information, and that information we can then try and interpret into figuring out what would be best for Vex. Alright, now that that is out of the way, let's get started on our abilities. First, her passive, Doom and Gloom. Periodically, she will have the power of Doom, which makes her next basic ability, so her Q, W, or E, basically fear the enemy. It can be feared from you when you hit them with their ability, or if you use your E to trigger it, it will fear from the center of your E. So in a way, you can almost have them feared towards you, like a charm. And then there's also Gloom, where enemies that dash or blink near you, or enemies hit by your E, will be marked with Gloom, where your next basic attack, your Q, or your W will do additional damage to the enemy, and then refund part of Doom's cooldown. So you can combo these together, so that way you're able to get off more frequent Doom procs, more frequent fears, and then also possibly get off extra damage by mixing in Looming Darkness, or if they try and flash away. It's also worth noting that you do also get to use this against non-champions, but the Gloom will be reduced in terms of the cooldown reduction and the damage dealt. But overall, you can use that to give you a little bit extra damage when you're clearing the wave, which we'll get to more when we talk about the E. Alright, so to really get into more of how to use the Doom and Gloom, we need to first get into her abilities. So let's start with her Q, Mistral Bolt. Mistral Bolt shoots a wave of mist towards the enemy, dealing damage to everything it passes through. It starts off with a wide but slow shot, then that goes skinny and fast towards the end. It's basically shape-wise opposite of how Caitlyn's works, where Caitlyn starts skinny, but then gets wider once it hits a target. This one starts wide, but then after a certain length, it will go ahead and be short and skinny. Overall, this is going to be your main wave clear tool. This is your main poke and harass tool. It's a very good ability, and it'll be a very solid way to be able to proc your Doom from a distance. As you can see, it has a nice 1200 range, which is around the same range as an Ezreal Q. Overall, it will help you do great deals of damage to the enemy. Now, go into her W, Personal Space. She emits a shockwave around her, and then that gives her a shield and does magic damage to all nearby enemies. This has great use with her ult, as her ult will have her dash into the opponent, as we'll get to later. But also, a shield is very helpful for when enemies are trying to dive onto you. And being able to shield yourself while also possibly triggering Doom around you to almost disengage the opponent can give you the opportunity to be safer for a champion that has medium range compared to someone able to dash on you from a long range, comparatively like, say, a LeBlanc. Overall, though, the damage as well, while it's not that great, it does have some use. It can be a little bit of a miniature burst. Overall, this is not an ability you want to use to wave clear, though. This is an ability more for dealing with the enemies getting on top of you, or when you get on top of them. Now, her E, Looming Darkness. This is a very important ability for her, as she commands Shadow to fly to a location, And upon arrival, Shadow deals magic damage to all nearby enemies and slows them for 2 seconds. This also procs Doom and will have the enemies fear away from that spot. Overall, this is going to be one of your main ways of being able to get heavy amounts of your Doom back. Whether you use it on the enemy, if you're able to, and then hit them with the Q, or if you're able to use it on a stacked up wave area and then Q through them. Most likely, if you're able to hit several targets with this, you'll be able to regain Doom almost instantly from all the Gloom procs, while also doing tons of damage to the wave. And then you'll be able to go on and roam around. For that's where the champion's strength is with their ultimate, Shadow Surge. So the first use of Shadow Surge fires forward in an area, hitting all targets it hits, but then colliding on an enemy champion if it hits one. It has a decently long range as well, going from 2,000 to 3,000, which is off screen. And when you recast it, you will be pulled towards the opponent, almost like a Nocturne ultimate, and being right on their spot. And then, if the target dies within 6 seconds of being hit by your ultimate, you can then use it again for no additional cost for the next 12 seconds. At least once. Maybe you'll be able to get it off on all 5 opponents. But this is your engage. This is how you reach the enemy. So how would you do this? Well, you hit a target, you then recast towards them, and then you can instantly W to go ahead and doom the entire enemy team. For the doom, will cause them to be feared. That amount of CC timing will give you the opportunity to hit an E and a Q, so you can get off an additional Gloom proc. You can do your Q damage or E damage, and hopefully that'll be enough to burst the enemy down. This is a big part of the champion. The champion has the great ability to roam due to it. It is quite literally just a Kaisa W that when you knock it onto someone, you can Nocturne ult them. It's very useful in that case. Alright, so now we've gone through all of her abilities. We know that you can use your E and your Q mostly for wave clear, your W is a good disengage or engage piece, while your ultimate is your heavy engage into the team. Now, we need to get into how do we use her? Where can we use her? How do we really get to the best out of her? And that's where the guide part comes in. So let's start first with her role. I went ahead and compiled it into stats here of her pick rate in different roles and her win rates in different roles so far. And from what we can see, the only role that has been good has been her mid lane role. It is the most picked, and it has a win rate that's actually notable. It's near 50% on a champion that's brand new. It's worth noting these stats come post hotfix nerf. She had already been nerfed at this point with her Q getting lower damage. But, as you can see, she still has decent stats in the mid lane role in comparison to top lane, which has low win rates, or support, which has very low win rates, or jungle, which is not even played. So what we can infer from this is where you typically want to pick her is mid. Don't try and think about playing with the other lanes with her, just stick with mid. Now let's get into summoner spells. For summoner spells, there were about 5 different choices that we can see on u.gg. There was Ignite, Teleport, Exhaust, Barrier, and Cleanse, with you taking Flash as the other rune, as the other summoner spell each time. So, most of the time people were picking Ignite, as Ignite is pretty standard for mid lane champions. Overall, I'd say it's a standard piece. Teleports is good for being able to roam, whether you're going to just teleport bot to make a play, or if you're doing early back strats, being able to get off an early back so that way maybe you can buy an earlier item. Get a nice power spike that can help you force a lead in mid lane so that way you can start roaming around with your ult. Then you have Exhaust and Barrier for helping you with defense. Exhaust really useful for all the assassins in mid lane that will try and get onto you when Doom is down and you'll need to survive. For when they get on top of you, they might be able to burst through your shield and kill you. And then Barrier just so that way you can maybe handle long-range offense from, say, a Xerath, or maybe also needing another way of handling another assassin, things like that. And then we also have Cleanse, which is good for easy crowd control effects, like the Twisted Fate Gold card. That being thrown at you, Cleanse, get out of there. So that way he's not able to get a 1v2 gank situation where you're just instantly destroyed because you're stunned for a minute. Now, we need to go into runes. I decided to split this up from keystones, main tree, subtree, and the stat tree, just so it's more easily digestible. I try to provide all the raw data though, so that way it can be better seen, more visual. And you can easily pause these and look over these stats as well. These stats were grabbed on the 25th of September. So, in terms of keystones, the standard one would be Electrocute, for it is the most consistently picked and it helps you a lot in lane. If you want to be able to scale up that damage more and you're able to consistently get the opponent below half, Dark Harvest is an option. Arcane Comet is good for poking, when you're able to poke with your Q a fair amount, but not able to get off your full combo or really weaken them too much with Dark Harvest. And the other ones just don't seem that good. They're not that picked, they're harder to get off, and they're not going to help you do what you want to do, which is like burst down people or engage real well and crowd control them with your fears. So now let's get into the main tree. We have two different trees that I want to focus on because they were the only ones where we took keystones, and that was Dominance and Sorcery. So for main tree 1, which is that top row, which the numbers are ordered by win rate, pick rate, and number of games played so far in the patch on that, and all these stats are Plat Plus. So first we have the main tree 1, where we have Cheap Shot, for being able to do extra damage after you fear the opponent, Taste of Blood for when you know you're going to need to recover from getting poked out, and then Mana Flow Band to help handle any mana problems that you might risk having. So now we need to get into main tree 2, where ultimately Eyeball Collector is the only one pickable on Dominance tree. Zombie Ward and Ghost Pour are much more timely to get off, and if you think it's possible for you, you can go ahead, but I feel like Eyeball Collector is going to be the one that you can more consistently get. And then when you look at Sorcery Tree, you can pick either Transcendence for its ability to help you have more ability haste so you can keep spamming your spells, or Absolute Focus if you're able to better deal with the opponent from a distance, keep your health up, then you can really shoot them down with the extra AP. So now we go into main tree 3. We can look at either Ravenous or Ultimate Hunter, whether you're going to be trying to use your ult more for your roaming potential, or you're trying to heal up a little bit as well with Ravenous. And honestly, any of the sorcery ones work. You can scale with Gathering Storm, you can poke with Scorch, you can better roam with Water Walking. All three are good, all three are usable. Just going to take a little bit of time to get used to the styles. Now we have subtrees, and honestly, I feel like Vex is able to use every single subtree, at least with one setup. So for our precision tree, we have Presence of Mind and Coup de Grace. Presence of Mind for being able to keep a little bit more mana regen, and then Coup de Grace for when the opponent's low, you can hurt them a lot more. Hence, that might work very well with a Dark Harvest setup. Then you have, when you take Sorcery Tree, you can go into your Dominance subtree, where you can grab Taste of Blood and Ravenous Hunter. Keep up a little bit of healing, be able to keep yourself more sustained. And then you have your Sorcery Tree, where you have Mana Flow Band as a pretty helpful requirement there for being able to keep your mana high. And then you can go Transcendence or Absolute Focus for the reasons explained before of ability haste versus extra early damage. And then we go into our sustainability tree, where we're going to be looking at shield bash and bone plating. Bone plating will help with any early trades where people are trying to hit you a few times at least. And then shield bash, I think, is actually going to be very good. Shield bash scales with your shield health, and your shield scales 80% with your AP, meaning that if you keep building high and high AP, you're going to have a big shield bash explosion, which will help your burst. And then for inspiration tree, you will have biscuits and time work tonic. The basics of just keeping yourself sustained, getting a little bit of movement speed, having a little bit of a burst heal, keeping yourself nice and healthy. It's a simple tree. Now for the stats tree, you can go with AP or attack speed. Attack speed will help with your farming. She can probably be clunky if you're not used to it, or if you get too used to the attack speed one. I typically am one that whenever I'm playing a champion that farms, I will grab the attack speed one, but I can understand taking the damage one. More ability power for the second tree, the other two are not worth it. And then armor or magic resist on the third tree. Health's a little bit too weak, and then just being able to pick up defensive depending on your lane opponent will be better suited for yourself. Now we gotta go into skill order. For skills, most people typically take Q at the start, though if you really need to, W at the start so that way you don't die level 1 can be helpful. And then going through skill priorities, Q first every time, then W. Your E, because it scales up in mana cost, is going to be too damaging for your mana pool early on. So you want to just mostly level your W second. Alright, now we're going to be getting into itemization. For all the changes, this is not too bad because mages kind of got shafted on getting good items this year. So starting with the starting items, currently people are going Doran's Ring and then 2 health potions. Though I think Corrupting Potion might be better. The stats are looking upwards on Corrupting Potion, and people typically do better with using active based items the more experience they have. So when you're getting more and more experience on Vex, you'll get more and more comfortable with maybe being able to use your Corrupting Pots rather than needing just all passes. And it means that you can keep your mana a little bit better controlled. For Corrupting Pot, for example, you need like 39 Doran's Ring kills to equal the amount of mana you would get from Corrupting Potion. So overall, the items I think would prove better overall than Doran's Ring. In terms of boots, all the other choices are not nearly as good as Sorcerer's Shoes. Sorcerer's Shoes are clearly the best one, and they should probably be the boots picked every game, unless you're in a case of like 5 auto attackers or 5 champions that are just going to try and stun you repeatedly. And now looking at the mythics, clearly there are a few very picked options of Ludens. I think Ludens is the best. I'm not accepting of the Leandries here. I don't think Leandries is good, though I do think Everfrost can work when you're trying to chain CC someone. When you need to keep someone locked down and you're not going to be bursting as hard, you can probably go for an Everfrost, so that way you can fear them when you've engaged in, and then also root them with the Everfrost. And then you also get Night Harvester and a Rocket Belt when you can do more burst and you don't need the mana as badly. In games where you're going out into the field, you're going to go fight them, and then you're immediately backing, you don't need as much mana. You can just go for the Night Harvester and probably do more damage. Especially if you're able to do a team fight situation where you hit 5 people with a W and fear them all. Now, looking into other legendaries in item order, it's separated by first, second, third, fourth, and fifth item. So for first item, you typically want to pick up your mythic, though you can pick up Zonias if you really need the safety. In terms of legendaries, you can pick up Horizon Focus. You can pick up your Zonias still, second item. You can pick up Cosmic Drive, you can pick up Neuromonicon, you can pick up Death Cap even. Though, if you're going for such items, I'd probably recommend just sticking with the Horizon Focus, or maybe the Cosmic Drive, being able to go for the more simple items earlier on. In terms of other legendaries, you can get your Void Staff, and you might be able to use a Demonic Embrace. Probably not. Doesn't seem very good, because ultimately, when you're diving in melee, I don't think you're going to be able to get as much use out of the armor and MR of that item, and the burn isn't as important as your burst. So, overall, just typical mage legendaries, and then you can go standard item of Mythic plus a Horizon Focus or Cosmic Drive, and then maybe your Zonias, and then going like your Void Staffs and Rabadons, so that way you can do proper high damage bursts, because the champion is fairly bursty when you get into a group. Now, let's go into a little bit of an example build. Here's a standard build. So you're a mid laner, you go Ignite and Flash. You take your Electrocute, your Taste of Blood, your Eyeball Collector, your Ravenous Hunter. You grab Mana Flow Band and Transcendence from the secondary tree, and then you get 2 AP runes and a Matter Resist rune for you're facing a mage. Your skill order from levels 1 to 3 is QWE, and that's how you also skill max of getting your Q up, then your W, then your E. You start with the Doran's Ring plus 2 pots, which is currently standard, though I feel like Corrupting will take over, as I said. And then your item path is pretty simple. You grab your Ludens, then your Sorcerer Shoes, a Horizon Focus, Zonias, Void Staff, Rabadons. So that way you can dash into the enemy, burst them down with your W for a fear, and then EQ the opponent to really blast their health away. Hopefully taking down one of either their mid laner or their AD carry and winning your team the fight. But what if you're wanting to be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more red, a little bit more mad? Well, you'd still be going a mid laner because this champion doesn't go anywhere else. You take Ignite and Flash. You can still go, instead of Taste of Blood, you go Cheap Shot. Instead of Ravenous Hunter, you go Ultimate Hunter. You're playing more aggressive. You're going to take a little bit of an early lead and then hopefully be able to transfer that into roaming around and taking the rest of the map with your ultimate. You get the Mana Flow Band still. You get the Absolute Focus, because you know what? Early game, you're more dominant than them. You're better than them. This is assuming you're facing, Yasuo, who you will have an advantage against due to the fact that you can constantly get Gloom procs on him if he tries to dash around like a moron. You still go the same skill order, you go Corrupting Pot, so that way you can keep your mana a little bit better and maybe do better trades when you go for better backs. And then you can maybe go Night Harvester into Sork Shoes and then into what you were going before. Maybe even putting in a Magi's instead of a Zonias, because you feel like you will pop off and carry your team to success, because you can and you will. Now, that is the end of my presentation for today. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like. You might comment what you feel like could be better, what any new tech that you think of or that you feel like needed to be added in. And if you enjoy this content and you want to keep seeing more of it, feel free to subscribe. I plan on trying to make more videos like this, maybe even more games, covering more patch notes and such, and I love to get more of a community. So, yes, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.